This news, if true, will have Avs fans shocked and the front office as well as we look at moves in the past that the Avalanche should have made and news that is actively going to change things in the future. As in this episode of Avs Digest, what is up, Avs Nation? This is your one-stop shop for all of your Avalanche news. Wonderful Monday to you all, and we're going to get right into it, but don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. But let's get right into it. I wish I had better news, but this is kind of the reality of an offseason where you lose in the first round. Things just kind of keep on getting worse before they get better, but hopefully they start to get better soon. But here's the situation. I mean, Brock Nelson has been reported by The Athletic, which is a credible source, will likely leave Colorado Avalanche this season. And it might not be because of he wants to, but just because of pure money problems. I mean, really, it's a tough sell to try and look at the Avalanche's money situation. This is courtesy of Puckpedia. You can actually see all of the salaries. Rest in peace, cap friendly. This is what we have to use now, but it's pretty close to the real thing. But really, yeah, you're looking at this situation and you're seeing it's going to be pretty tough to keep a guy like Brock Nelson. And I want to point out something that I think that the Avalanche have strayed from in their last few years. They won the cup by being analytical, smart geniuses, getting players that were on low contracts that people weren't confident in and turning them into great players. Devon Taves was a guy that people loved analytically, and the Islanders couldn't keep him. The Avalanche swooped in and took him. Valery Nichushkin was a player nobody thought was good anymore, and they took him and turned him into an amazing player, and then signed him for, at the time, what was going to be a really cheap contract. Now, it's kind of gone back and forth whether or not that's a value contract, but really, at the time, he was a 26-year-old winger about to head into his prime. You absolutely sign that guy. And it's same thing with Nazem Kadri, which was a guy that the Avalanche absolutely should have kept. I've come to that conclusion. If you guys are familiar with the bell curve meme, the beginning is keep Nazem Kadri because he's good. The top is, cap and trying to have a good team. And the bottom is, yeah, you should have kept Nazem Kadri. He was a good second line center. And you've been throwing assets into a black hole ever since trying to replicate that. Just sign the guy. But really, with this whole thing, it shows that the Avalanche management has gone away from what they're very good at. They don't get these good analytical players. They are overpaying guys over and over again. I mean, the biggest and most egregious thing is this defense. $4.5 million for Josh Manson, who's almost never healthy in the regular season. Now, he's great in the playoffs, but when then you realize that your Samuel Girard also makes $5 million, and those aren't even your top pairing defensemen. And they don't even play together because they can't. Their results together are so bad that Girard and Manson have to play apart. So you have almost $10 million in cap space wrapped up in defensemen that aren't your top pairing. That is just kind of gross mismanagement, in my opinion. And honestly, after the cup run, it was this situation which snowballed into a much bigger one. If you had either not overpaid Josh Manson, maybe you could have kept him, or not overpaid Sam Girard, or found a way to trade him for better assets after the cup, you would have probably been able to sign Nazem Kadri. Let's check in our old pal, Nazem Kadri. That Brock Nelson picture will come in relevant in here just a second, but they're almost the same age, which is something I wanted to point out. You actively overpaid to get Brock Nelson, who will likely leave in the summer, instead of re-signing Nazem Kadri. So if age was a factor in worry, then why would you bother trading for Brock Nelson? It clearly wasn't the issue. It was just the money. And Nazem Kadri has had a better career in the last few years than Brock Nelson. Brock Nelson had a decent season this year, but Nazem Kadri had 35 goals and 67 points, more than 10 more than Brock Nelson. It's just kind of baffling how bad this Nazem Kadri not signing has reflected on the Avalanche. Like I said before, you're throwing away and overpaying to get an old Brock Nelson who wasn't having that good of a season up to there. I mean, if you had traded Cal Ritchie straight up for Brock Nelson, I would say okay. If you had thrown in maybe a third, I would say fair enough. The fact that there's a first round pick in there as well is just an egregious overpay for this management. And let's look at the Charlie Coyle trade while we're at it, because this is kind of an overall point. This Avs management has been overpaying and has just not been good at getting the right guys to perform for them. They're just completely losing all ends of the trades. If they try to re-sign guys, they just can't. They let Sean Walker go last season in the offseason after trading a first to get him, and he only signed in Carolina for like $2.5 million. You couldn't sign that guy? I mean, it's just been some pretty bad management decisions since the cup run, and it's unfortunate because it was the smart edge of this management that was the reason why the Avs were able to win the cup in 2022. The Avs made so many good decisions with a lot of players, and now it just seems like that's not happening anymore. I mean, Casey Middlestat should have been for Charlie Coyle 1-for-1. Casey Middlestat is 26 years old, I believe. He might be 27 now. He was still a good player with tons of upside. Charlie Coyle was having a down year. And it's kind of just like, how does that not be a 1-for-1 in the first place? Boston should accept that. The fact that they're getting a decent prospect of a player. Then not only do you have to throw in a, a good prospect in Will Zellers, who was a third-round pick last year for the Avs, but had an amazing season in the United States Hockey League. He had like 44 goals. He was actually looking like some diamond in the rough in the third round for the Avs, like a good draft steal. Trade that guy away. And you also trade a second-round pick. It's getting to the point where these overpays are insane, and they should be what get a GM fired, honestly. Now, these are the comparisons between Brock Nelson's career and Nazem Kadri. They're actually incredibly similar. Kadri is actually the older player. But as you can see, the concern at the time might have been too much money and the age. Well, clearly he's worth that amount of money. And clearly the age hasn't been a factor for at least the first 3 years past that contract. If you ask me, that's a cup window. Is at least another 3 years after you've won your first cup. That's a good cup window. We could probably still be in the playoffs right now if maybe Nazem Kadri are here. Or in a situation where we don't have to get a second line center, we could then use the assets we traded for Brock Nelson and for Charlie Coyle to then, because we don't have to trade for to replicate Nazem Kadri's success in Brock Nelson, we can then use those assets to get even better. This is something that the Dallas Stars do all the time. That's why they have one of the best forward cores in the entire league. This is also the reason why you look at how the Avs are right now, and they had an opportunity to really bolster themselves. There was a while back where instead of trading Byram to try and fix the second line center, even going back another season prior to this one, we could have used Byram to trade for a kid named Cutter Gauthier. Now, Cutter Gauthier is a very intriguing prospect. He plays on the Ducks. And the Flyers actually wanted to trade him to us for Bowen Byram. If we weren't in the market for a second-line center at the time, that probably would have been a trade we would have. And we would have our own dynamic, fast, good goal-scoring prospect in our wings right now. But instead, we don't because of the amount of asset mismanagement happening from this management in general. And I don't want it to be too negative. I love what our management group has been able to do for this Colorado Avalanche team, but I wanted to point out that because of situations like this, with Brock Nelson leaving, just how many assets we're throwing into the void. And instead of spending it on good players or just re-signing players, and then we don't have to keep spending assets. But it looks like once again, come trade deadline, the Avalanche will be looking for another second line center. And that is just horrible. That is just kind of unacceptable by this management group. And I want to end with this. A lot of people are blaming Chris MacFarland for these things. And I think he should be blamed. He's part of the problem. But Joe Sakic has also been able to avoid criticism because he's so beloved by the fan base. But let's not forget, before the Avalanche started making the playoffs, before they were good, they were actually horrible. They were the worst team in a long time. They actually broke a record, and that was all under the leadership of Joe Sakic. Joe Sakic has made a bunch of bad, boneheaded moves in his career. He's made a lot of good ones and obviously led to another cup for this franchise, but let's not pretend that he can't make bad decisions. And it's a question to be asked, if this season is repeated again, is it time for him to move on? This has been Avalanche Digest, your number one stop for all of your Avs news. Hope you have a good one, Avs Nation, and hopefully we have some great things to talk about coming soon.